So in this segment, we're going to be talking about post-Brexit import checks that are set to be delayed for the fourth time. We spoke about this before, but it looks like this is closer to happening now. Politics home very much closer to the Tory party than any other party, I believe. There is a slight Tory conservative leaning to the way they write, bit UKIP-y. So it makes me think that they're a bit more in the know than we are. Maybe other papers are. So the UK is edging closer to announcing another delay to checks on imported goods from the EU as the government looks at ways of abating the ongoing cost of living crisis. If they wanted to do stuff about the cost of living crisis, they have the powers at hand to do it. They're choosing not to. An announcement is expected in the coming weeks. Several officials have told Politics Home it would be the fourth time that ministers have postponed the introduction of this wave of post-Brexit paperwork. Unlike the EU, which brought them in with immediate effect when the Brexit transition period ended on 31st of December 2020. It's a bit misleading because some of the checks, like the rules of origins, were pushed back until the start of this year. Slightly misleading from them, but not a game-breaking point. This stuff here, I'm just getting proper sick of it. Minister pushing Johnson to trigger Article 16 after the Irish elections. It's going to be very hard, I think, to trigger Article 16 with the First Minister being, Sinn Féin. So again, they're going to say we have to trigger Article 16 because of this, and Michelle O'Neill's going to be like, no, you don't, and it's going to look stupid. But going back to this article, last month the Financial Times reported that Mogg, the Brexit Opportunities Minister, was leading cabinet forecalls on these checks to be postponed. Let's not forget that we are in breach of WTO's most favourable nations rule because we are treating the EU, a WTO member, differently to how we're treating other WTO members by not doing physical checks on goods coming in from the EU, as well as safety and other checks. The argument to push the deadline beyond July is now gathering momentum across Whitehall despite resistance from DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and that's kind of down to vets as well. Vets oppose delaying the checks, which we'll speak about in a bit. Politics Home also understands there's growing support for a postponement lasting significantly longer than 6 months, the length of a previous day. Longer than 6 months, the length of a previous day, with figures, that doesn't make sense, that sentence, with figures like Mogg and Frost, the former Brexit secretary, pushing for them to be shelved indefinitely while the government works on plans to digitise the border. And I don't think we'll get, the UK's ideal border system won't be enforced until 2025, according to them, which is after the next election. Of course it is. But also, I don't think they'll ever really get it online just because the amount of work that will go into getting a proper border system is just way too much money and way too much hassle for these Tories. They can't even get the GVMS system right, which is far easier than doing a full import system, honestly. We saw the carnage that caused the other week. There is a concern that European suppliers, particularly small to medium-sized companies and those that send goods in smaller quantities, will struggle with the paperwork and decide to ditch the UK market altogether, resulting in reduced supermarket choice and higher prices for British consumers. So essentially, a lot of UK, especially smaller suppliers, SMEs will ditch the UK as a market because the complexities around paperwork, just like we've seen SMEs ditch the EU as an export market, that same thing will happen. Because I don't know how much support governments are actually going to put in place to support, say, Spanish or French, Dutch or German businesses to export to the UK. We don't know how much support will be there. They might give support to, sell goods to other EU members or whatever and say, like, well, you've lost the UK as a market, but, do you know who else is interested in this stuff? Poland or Norway has a weird relationship with the EU. There are still checks, but it's far easier to get goods into Norway than it is into the UK. The growing feeling within government is that it would be unwise to go ahead with this phase of Brexit paperwork while the country is dealing with the cost of living crisis. The reason it would be unwise to do so is the port of Dover is really small for a start, and it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause more problems in Calais, really, because that's where some of the paperwork will be checked over to make sure it's correct. The way ports work is weird, but essentially we don't have the staff, the space, the expertise to do this stuff, and if food prices continue to skyrocket, which they are, it'll only get worse for the government. If suddenly the prices go up because people can make that connection with the paperwork, the government have got no way out of this, and it makes Brexit look like the shambles it is. With households currently grappling with soaring energy bills and widespread inflation, the UK inflation is really high. Early this month, however, the British Veterinary Association warned that further delay to EU import checks would expose the UK to the risk of importing diseases like African swine fever. Now, I'm not familiar with African swine fever, but it sounds terrifying. It's because the foods aren't going to be properly inspected, especially because they're going to take a while to be on the ships or the containers the meats and stuff comes in. Because before, I reckon, before they would have gone through the EU, say for example, if they stopped off in say Italy, for example. Italy's quite close to North Africa, right? If they were going to export goods into Italy and then take it from Italy to the UK, they could have done that pre-Brexit. But now, obviously, it's a lot more hassle if you wanted to do that, because they would go through the UK's import system checks. So instead, I think those cargo ships would go to Italy, then take whatever goods they want to sell to the UK into the UK, which makes it take longer for the goods to be inspected, which apparently increases the risk of these diseases. Again, I'm not a vet or a veterinary expert. I've just gone off what I remember of the original article in the Independent. Not all affected trade bodies support the idea either. Groups like Scottish Food and Drink argue that it would result in EU exporters to the UK continuing to enjoy minimised friction, while UK exporters to face the UK exporters to face the full plethora. Again, this guy writes really weird. To face the full plethora of post-Brexit paperwork, which it is in full now. You don't face full inspections and things like that. However, in terms of rules of origins, customs, SPS checks, we get hit with the full shebang because we're a third country. It's precisely because of Brexit we're able to set our own import controls, which is best suited to our needs, according to a government spokesperson. But, the simple fact is we are in breach of WTO rules. So either we sort this out soon or we get sued. By a WTO member, because we're breaching the most favourable nations rules. So, the only way we can get around this is if we reduce import checks across the board, which I think Lord Frost would be a fan of, but that's how you allow products that are potentially substandard to get into the UK. So, these guys want to give me an endless headache. Feels like we're in the infinite Tsukiyomi from Naruto, man. Some sort of infinite loop, but instead of it being good, it's just a nightmare. And it just doesn't end because the Tory government feel like they'll be there forever because people keep voting against their best interests. And this is just another example of the nonsense, really, that they're delaying import checks for the fourth time because we don't have the facilities for that. When this whole Brexit thing kicked off, we should have got Big Shaq to ask us the question, big man, have you got the facilities for that, though? Because evidently we don't. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there before my brain ruptures. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.